Welcome to Female Founderhood Podcast, a raw, like literally, like as raw as your sashimi. Conversations between two female founders, myself, and the fabulous Fab Giovanetti. Is that like, am I butchering the Italian accent?
You're absolutely not butchering, and I love that you gave me a sashimi reference. That made me really, really happy and instantly hungry. So, ouch.
Oh my god, that is the thing. Like, so Fab and I, we're both immigrants in the UK. But we are equally like loving the startup scene over here, and we actually met in an event full of young ambitious women, and instantly I fell in love with this bubble of red ball of energy. So for listeners who cannot see the video, she is like a bubble gum that never pops. It's just like
Oh, wow.
so
It's like a good and a bad thing at the same time. It's just like, it's there kind of bursting, and you're like, oh, is she gonna?
yeah,
And then she
exactly.
doesn't.
In that also that she doesn't have an off button. So I'm gonna struggle
No.
with this podcast. So here's the disclaimer. I'm now experimenting using a new platform called Riverside FM. So you can tell me if this is a good, bad, or worse than my usual episode. But that also means that I only have 2 hours of recording per month because this is still like a free account. So anyway, here I go blabbering. So Fab is the head teacher. I love that she calls herself a head teacher because here in the UK,
Of course I am.
but she is secretly a founder of the Alt Marketing School. If only this school existed in my teens, I would have been like front center sitting and nerding out about marketing. So tell me, speaking of, being a teen, what did you want to be when you grow up?
Where do we start? That is the answer. Because, Becca, I wanted to be anything. Like, pretty much. I think the earliest memory was where everybody, I'm just going to go through their kind of
Older.
mind palace. Maybe a director. At some point, I wanted to be a director. At some point, I wanted to be a dancer. It didn't turn out too well. Not for me. At some point, I wanted to be a singer as well. What I know that I've always wanted to be, let's put it this way, when I eventually stopped kind of being like, I want to throw things at the wall because I'm 5 or 10.
Right.
But when I was 11 or 12, I told this story on a workshop that I ran like this month at time of recording. I was telling about my first experience with Stephen King, a good old American man who wrote a lot of books. And I was saying into the workshop the fun story that I talk about actually in one of my books, where I gandered and I graduated from Goosebumps, like the series. I read all the books and the library had nothing else for me. And I was like, I am 11 at the time. I was like, what the hell am I going to read now? So I wandered into the adult section and I found a really cool cover from a book from Stephen King. And that was my introduction to him. And I read one book and I was hooked. And I remember that I wrote my first series of short stories. Again, this is how old it was, on a spiral notebook, I guess, with a pencil. And now anybody, if you are left-handed like I am, I don't know, are you left-handed or
I'm
right-handed?
right-handed, but I understand where you're getting at.
Smudgula. So not only this girl was writing, she was writing with a little pencil. She was smudging her way through the writing. So you can imagine when eventually we turned into laptops and I could actually, we printed it. My mom, bless, print a couple of things for me of this collection of short stories. But I had to go and read through my smudges. I don't have that notebook anymore, but I still remember it very fondly. So in answer to your question, a lot of things. I think writer was the main one when I actually, settled a bit more on what I really wanted to be. And then journalist as well. I wanted to be a music journalist, which I was for quite a few years as I went from Italy to the UK. So these were the two things I would say that in the more formative years I knew I wanted to be.
So And during those, dreaming of this and that, I am not familiar with Italian culture other than my Italian friend just told me that spaghetti bolognese is not Italian food.
No, everybody. It's the name that is not really. There is an Italian food that is that, but yeah, the name is. If you say in Italian, they're like, "What? Wait, what are you in?"
Exactly. So what is the culture there as you grow up and you want to be all of these professions in your family or in the community that you grew up in? Any indication that some professions are like a no-go for girls?
Not as
Mm.
much. What I would say is that I've been really lucky that both my mom and my father grumbled about it, but it was still like it was a good positive
Uh-huh.
grumble. Wasn't much of a talker. Whereas my mom she's always like, "Wee!"
Uh,
But both of them, that's the thing. I have to give them both credit. Like both of them always allowed me to be who I wanted to be. I've always been very driven. The weird things you boast as a type A
uh-huh.
person. I had no problem doing my homework. I would do it on my own. I would do it all the
Uh-huh.
time. I would just get it done. Because then the sooner I did it, the sooner I could do whatever I wanted.
Yeah.
So actually I didn't mind doing it, you know?
Uh-huh.
And I did it on my own because they both worked. So I was with my grandparents. So I just did it on my own since I can
Mm.
remember. So in that respect, they knew that I kind of, I wanted to show up and work hard because I had ideas of what I wanted to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was the main thing. I think is less of a cultural thing as it is then I graduated from uni, Russian and English literature, everybody. Very useful today in this day and age. I
You
mean, I
should
guess
broker.
for my English.
You should finish this war.
Well, that definitely, even if I throw my Akoski at them or Pushkin, it's not going to work. But it's not going to work. But what was interesting about
Mm.
that is that my problem was I graduated at the time where one of the 50,000 recessions that people of our generation had to go through,
Mm-hmm.
to be very honest. And so that was the thing. It wasn't as much as like culturally when I was younger. It was more when I was at the time of having to jump into work. I realized that culturally, if you want to go into the cultural element, this is when the cookie crumbles, not as women, but as young people in
Yep.
general. There might be a subset when it comes to women, but in general, because it was just like everybody at the time,
Mm-hmm.
especially, you had to kind of make do with what you
Yeah.
want, with what you thought you could
Yeah.
do. And even the chance of doing something, even for free, just to kind of get
Yeah.
started, it just wasn't an
Mm-hmm.
option. And that's why one of the reasons why I left. And I was like, I'm going to go to this other country because even if I have to do it for free for like years, which thankfully didn't happen, but months for
Yeah.
sure, I'm gonna pursue my dream. And I felt I had more chances here than there,
Mm-hmm.
but not as much as because I was a woman, or even because of the fact that we were not wealthy. We were like getting by.
Mm.
It wasn't even that, because what I wanted to do wasn't necessarily becoming a doctor or a lawyer,
Yeah.
putting years and years of university. It was just the fact that there were no opportunities and nobody was actually kind of even encouraging you to try and pursue things that were maybe a bit more ambitious or
Mm-hmm.
different. So entrepreneurship wasn't a thing. It
Mm.
became a thing maybe 5 years ago instead of 10 years ago, like we've experienced when you
Yes.
come here. So everything is a bit backwards in that respect. We've fallen behind a lot, and I don't know how much we're catching up, but I think I felt it a lot during that time. Does that answer the question? Because I went on
I
a
think
tangent of,
so,
of
but
later days.
I now am curious. How old are you as of recording?
I mean, you should never ask a lady her
But
age.
you're not a
Joking.
lady.
I'm absolutely joking. What am I then? If you can only see me shaking my boobs. Anyway, she's shaking her boobs. I am, oh God, wait a second, 32, because I'm 33 this year. So I'm 32.
Oh, I'm 39, but in a few months I'll be 40. So that's,
Yeah, but look at us. We look so youthful. Nobody will ever know.
I know. And that's dangerous because I still get carded when I buy wine. Like,
I don't. That's what I knew I made it. I was like, okay, not anymore.
okay, I will start worrying when people like give me an approving nod when I pick up my wine. Like, I know you're, I know you've had a long day, probably a long decade.
That should be the best thing. I know you had a long decade. And you're like, yeah, I did.
Yeah, I did. Thank you very much. So, So you moved to the UK to study, is that right? At the beginning?
I did a year abroad studying, but
Okay.
I was studying in Italy. So, Italian university fees are very different. Yay! Positive, to be honest. So, yeah, no, I came here after I studied, came back home, finished my degree, and then came here to work.
Mm. So how did you, so this was what year? So early 2011, 12?
Yeah, 10,
Yes.
2010s,
So
11s.
this
Now
is,
I'll
just for
look at it.
context, this is
Yeah.
pre-Brexit, right?
Oh, yeah, of course, years and years.
Yes.
That was,
So
yeah, a while
how
back.
was it for a European? It's, by the way, it doesn't sound right to call an Italian European. You're like your own. So, what is it like for an EU citizen to find work in England pre-Brexit? Was it easy, or was it like, what are you talking about? It's equally hard, etc.
Well, I said it before, because the experience that I had at home was either you do wherever you can,
Mm.
or you work in a supermarket.
Mm-hmm.
Literally, it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
It was in that case it was easier because, first of all, I've never been afraid to do random things.
Yep.
So my first job, official job, when I came back, and I wasn't in London yet, I was in Bath, as I mentioned off air as
Mm-hmm.
well. I was working at Nando's represents, and I did a year and a bit at Nando's, and I gave everything to that place, because I was like, even if I was hustling, going to gigs and
But what were you
writing for
doing?
some UK magazines,
What were you doing in Nando's?
just flipping chicken and getting people into the door. That was my vibe. Babes, I just graduated. I didn't give a damn. I was already living the dream. I was back to a city I loved. I was with my boyfriend at the time, and he was finishing his degree.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, I'm working at Nando's. I'm making money. And also because a lot of people were students, and I was pretty much their age,
Mm-hmm.
so they treated you a lot like a student. So it was very much, it was probably a lot more fun and a lot more kind of enjoying life than what it would have been at home, in a way.
Okay.
And because I didn't mind doing those things, I kept on doing and going until I moved to London, when
Mm-hmm.
eventually I was accepted for I think unpaid though internship for a music PR. So that's where I decided to move.
Mm.
But again, I don't think I would have had that kind of opportunity. And then it led to a completely sidetracked paid job, and that was how I started in marketing. Fun
Yeah.
fact. But I don't think it would have happened in Italy in the same way.
Mm.
I probably would have been older, probably would have done like different things. It's just that is maybe where the culture comes in. So,
Yeah.
in my experience, it wasn't anything that was either hard or not hard, because I already knew what I wanted to do
Mm-hmm.
next. Instead of just being, I'm just going to do this because I just want to be abroad and try
Mm.
new things, I had a path. I always say this,
Mm-hmm.
for better or for worse, I always know what I'm going to do
Yep.
next. And that's what I can relate with a lot of my students or even clients
Mm-hmm.
that come to me and they're like, oh, I don't know what to do next. I'm like, that's the only thing that I can help you with, but it's hard for me to fully relate on a personal level because I always knew. And that's been
Mm.
a blessing, I realize now, with the wisdom of age.
Wisdom of wine. Um,
Well, I'm sober, so not really, but yeah.
but I tell you, well, here's the thing. Speaking of sober, just to sidetrack a little bit, I only started drinking when I was
I love it.
26. I grew up in a Muslim population, so and alcohol is taxed at 400%. So unless you can afford it, you're nowhere near a bar. So anyway, as you said, you always knew what you wanted to do next. When did you know you're going to build your own marketing school?
2 years ago.
Oh my God, I love this. So what?
Maybe 3 years ago.
Okay, so how did that idea come about? Is it like an idea that came out of the shower or out of a conversation with friends? Or tell me.
That's a good point. So I would say, so for a bit of context, right before this, I've been self-employed for now almost 10 years. Next year it will be 10 years.
Wow.
And I started as a consultant slash coach, which now I'm still a consultant. So that element is still there, like as a marketing consultant. I was a business consultant, but nevertheless. Then I Then I created this company called Health Bloggers Community first, which kind of is easy to explain what it is because it said it in the name, Health Bloggers Community. And then it became Creative Impact. So I had that for almost 8 years.
Wow.
So that's what I was doing. And I was quite happy doing that because I love the wellness scene. It really helped me. Like, I really love that space. What I love doing, what I was doing there though, see, this is a thread. Going back to, what you wanted to do as a child. I never wanted to be a teacher, but I would love teaching stuffed toys because they can't run. All the things that I learned things. I love to spread what I'm learning. I love to talk about what I'm learning to others. Again, stuffed toys included, apparently. So even when I was doing Creative Impact, we did events, a lot of editorial, which I loved, a lot of partnerships and sponsorships. But what I was thriving was the teaching. So towards the end of Creative Impact, which kind of unsurprisingly coincided with the pandemic, I was also doing some side teaching on, when it came to colleges and some companies I still do teaching for when it came to marketing, because that's been a constant. I would teach marketing and business to wellness entrepreneurs. So it was all there. And so because things were not going too well with Creative Impact, it was for a while, it was transitional. And then with the pandemic, having literally 75% of our business was offline events, it was a massive pivot, and it was really getting to a point where everything changed and I was struggling to kind of get that passion for it and also to kind of find a way out. So as things were winding down, going back to your original question, I just wanted to do something for fun that would be me talking about marketing, because I knew that was another thing that I love to talk about, still with an element of, obviously, alt marketing school, in case you don't know us, is all about marketing to hearts, is all about positive impact and purpose. And, we can call it ethical marketing, call it whatever you want. It's just marketing to humans, these are the two things, market to hearts and market to humans. I wanted to find a place that could do that. And I think as I started the podcast, it's just a way for me to blabber, because we like to blabber.
Yeah.
So, why not doing it?
Exactly.
With a
This
microphone.
is the danger of the platform, because people like you and I will just use and abuse it. But can I rewind a little bit? I want you to tell us your mental state, because this is what is rarely talked about. Your mental state when the pandemic hits, when you, even before you thought about pivoting, because there must be that down in the trenches, pulling your hair, don't want to get up in the morning, I just want to eat pizza at random hours. That's Italian food, right? So
yes, it is. Oh, good.
not a New York food. So yeah, tell me about that mental state that you were in, and how eventually you can come out of it.
That's a great question. Now, the answer probably is a bit more complicated than kind of in and out. I have lived with depression since I was 10.
Wow.
So, and anxiety was about depression. Depression has been my friend.
Well,
so to
depression
say.
and anxiety
So
are like Siamese twins.
Yeah, but anxiety has been, it's grown on me, I think, as I got older, and obviously the pandemic heightened that side of it. But I lived with depression for most of my life.
Wow.
For most of it, for as long as I remember. So in a way, and this comes from me, by the way, it's not like for everybody who lives with depression will have the same experience. But from my experience, what I've learned is that I have always had a level of self-awareness around myself. And also, again, not putting words into everybody who lives with depression, but also about my mortality. And which I think a lot of us have not really come to terms, especially talking to some friends and even my now husband. Not everybody has kind of come to terms with that, like even maybe until that moment with the pandemic, with seeing so many people around us, it's not just like obviously like kind of grief and in certain ways, but it was at a mass scale, So again, this is just context as well, but also wanted to answer the question. So because of that, I always had a level of self-awareness as I eventually kind of came through it and learned how to live with it and how to coexist with it when I was in my early 20s, a bit better. And I think now that I'm in my 30s is even better. So with the pandemic, I had to literally go back to all of my arsenal and toolkit of things that I knew to help me out. because then, as you say, anxiety came to the party, and I was like, "Oh, you are a new friend. I haven't been around you for a lot, for as long." And it was interesting for me then to be really aware of that, and to then find my ways to work through it. The thing for me is that because I lived with, it can go in different ways. It can be a bit of the fog. It can be sometimes just heightened emotion, but for such a long time, I think for me, I almost felt it more afterwards. As things got a bit better, as things kind of, calmed down, then I felt the pressure more because I realized for how long I've been trying to be strong for everybody else, including myself. So it's been less like that element of not being able to get up in the morning, because to be honest, some days for no reason I just can't, and that's just how my brain
Yeah.
works, and I have to kind of be gentle with that.
Yeah.
So I think, I don't know if he answers the question, but I think the reason why it's hard for me to pinpoint it is because it was one different way that triggered some things that were already kind of my
How about
my not normal experience, but a common one for me.
how about sharing some of the tools that probably listeners can apply, because not everyone have the access to diagnosis and medication and therapy. So imagine there's a broke girl like me needing, okay, give me some tools, I'm depressed.
Well, again, it's hard for me to speak for others, because I also find that then, it's hard for others to speak for me because it's such a unique thing.
Yes, of course.
What personally has worked for me always has been, writing has been a big outlet for me. So, people say journaling. I think there is a reason, because especially I was really young. It was hard for me to understand what my brain was kind of going through. I was very young. So I wrote it down a lot. And I think the writing, now that I'm older, is also the vocalizing and talking to people about it, like my best friend, again, my husband, down my speed dial whenever I'm not feeling great. And also I think is helping. This is kind of sounds weird, but because I can tell you meditation works, yes, go and do it. But I want to tell you some things that maybe you're not thinking about, which actually are more powerful than we realize, which is also helping the people around us understand how to I was going to say deal with us, but that's the wrong word. How to, but you know what I mean?
Yes.
How to help us the best.
Yes,
that's the best way to say it. How to help us the best when we are how we're feeling.
Yeah.
Because people naturally would want to fix things or help by solving problems or trying to find solutions. And a lot of the time for me, for example, for how I am, I just need that space. I need to say, I'm not feeling great.
Yeah.
I need to just be on my own. It's not you, it's nothing else. It just is. And then it allows me to kind of just take it easier and kind of step back. But it's the hardest thing, communication, because it needs a level of self-awareness that can be kind of exhausting until you learn how to live with it,
Absolutely. I think even just in general, as women or humans who menstruate, we have that PMS, right? Every cycle we have that. Just being aware that, like, shit, why am I offended with something that normally I'm not offended by? That's a good self-awareness. That's why I'm happy when my phone tells me your period is coming up. So it's just mean that A, stop wearing white jeans. B, just know that if you're offended this week, it's not you, it's the hormone. It's not like you become less empathetic or you become bitchy. No, it's just that your hormone is like giving you a different lens towards whatever messages that you are consuming. And I think it's similar way as if you have a mental condition, neurodivergent, etc. It's super great for when you are aware. Plus, and this is what you're advising us, to create a low-key manual, like user's guide. Like, this is how to communicate with me when I'm being overwhelmed, or this is how to communicate with me when I'm burnt out, Or this is a good practice to share with your friend, like just before you start venting, you probably make a disclaimer. Look, I just need you to hear me out. I'm not trying to find a solution. I just need somebody within earshot. So I think having that users or viewers disclaimer at the beginning would help. Now let's fast forward to building the school. How did you
And 180. I love it.
Let's fast forward to building the school. Because as we know, it's not like when you have depression or mental health condition, it's not like, oh, I had it from 1999 to 2001. You just have it. It's part of you. It's like your ear. You don't feel your ear until you have an infection or something. But so you had the idea to build a school, right? And of course, it's going to be an online school, especially that it's a pandemic baby. What did you do first? Like, did you build a business plan first? Did you find a name first? Did you secure the domain name? What did you do? Tell me about the early days.
The pandemic baby. I like that analogy. That's what it felt like. I think the name of the school came naturally with the name of the podcast, because again, it started as a podcast. So I was like, well, I want us to be different. So alternative. So that was it, which is funny because every single time I say it, especially when I'm doing captions, it turns as old because I don't say alt. So it's so funny. It's like old, and I'm like, it's not old marketing school. That it's hilarious. Anyway, so if anybody thinks that, it happens more often than I like. But also when you've been enough in the business, when literally you and others just call it, I just call it AMS, because that's what it is, alt marketing school, and it's faster. At the beginning, I would just kind of always say the full name, and I was like, anyway, that was naturally happening because of the podcast. So that was the first steps, I would say. When it comes to actually, then it becomes an actual school and not just a podcast. So I have run 2 successful crowdfunding campaigns, and I wanted the school to be supported enough for me to really run the certification, which is our main. It was, now it is not, but it was our main offering. So the business model was all around that, because I still had creative impact at the time. So I was trying to figure out how they could coexist. That was my first thinking. So I was like, I'm just going to do the certification and the podcast. But the certification, I wanted to have guest teachers, which we do have. And, I wanted to have more support. I didn't want to start fully bootstrapped. And like, spoiler alert, the crowdfunding didn't work out. I understand why, and obviously we can talk about it, but I just want to say I understand why, but it didn't work out, which means I was like, excellent, back to a drawing board. And then I was really lucky that because I did a lot of market research for the crowdfunding too, just to understand what the certification would look like, the messaging. I then waited, and I remember I was in my honeymoon, day like 2 on my honeymoon, or mini moon, because it was still pandemic, so we called it the mini moon. And I got this email back because somebody said to me, like a friend of a friend, they connected, they were like, why don't you try and apply to join this platform that gives you all the access for like cohort-based courses, which is kind of what the certification is. You have to go through the application. At the time, we had to send like example of case studies and market research to prove that this was going to work. And I was like, I'm going to do it. So that, like, see, they're probably not going to accept me. Who cares? And they did. So thanks to they, which is Maven, the platform that we partner with for our cohorts. Thanks to them, I was then able to do this course, still bootstrapped. So still very much kind of counting our pennies. But I was able to do it, and it just kind of arrived at the right time. So I took a bit of a break, and then after literally 2 months, I did this application and it worked out. So these were the first steps. So a couple of good things, couple of lessons. That's what I'm going to call it, because I genuinely believe it was for the best. But so yeah,
so tell us why do you think, just so that we can learn from your mistake, why even as a successful crowdfunder before, why did this not work?
I believe it was definitely one thing, and then it could be a combination of others. Obviously, this also happened during I'm just trying to remember, like, my, again, brain palace, mind palace. It was, I think, still in the middle of the pandemic, not the beginning, but in the middle. So at that time as well, I genuinely think that this is a bit of an external kind of reasoning, but I think that also didn't help as much
Yeah.
because priorities were very different, especially when you're looking for crowdfunding, not for people to actually take the course. That's not how we did it. But I think the main thing was that it's something that I listened to on another podcast and it really spoke true to me. This is Justin Welsh, who's really famous on LinkedIn and Twitter and is a solopreneur. And he was talking about how if he could start again, he would really focus on brand awareness. Like for as long as you physically can, as a fellow marketer, I think you'll understand. Before then you do an ask. And I think because of the magical world of the internet, we see a lot of people that do something, launch fast, and there's the kind of the unicorns of this world. But actually, building that rapport, building that audience fit takes time. And I think because I had a really strong audience with creative impact and a really loyal audience, which I'm really grateful for, I felt that then would be a no-brainer that this will work for the school, which is me, again, my mispositioning in my brain. The audience that I was talking to for the school were completely different. So it's hard for me then to kind of expect without any brand awareness, without any kind of education and also kind of that trust building experience, the crowdfunding would have not worked. Why did it work for my book? Because it was me and I was talking to my audience for the book. For creative impact, we actually did it like, I think after 4 years that we were in business and I did it all bootstrapped and then we up leveled it. This time I was looking for something bigger from an audience that didn't even know me.
Right.
And there are some people that can do that. Don't get me wrong. But I know that for what we wanted to build, I also realized, that's why I said a lesson, not necessarily a mistake.
Yeah.
It would have been the wrong way anyway, because I think I would have pushed myself to build something too fast without actually having to be forced to do it small and learn a lot along the way. I don't think I would have been able to implement as much as I did, which is why, our certification, everybody loves it. Everybody raves about it. Everybody after the experience, they say it's life-changing. Not putting words into mouths, it's true. Because after every single one I implement, because they're still small enough for me to talk to every single person that will allow me to talk to them afterwards and make changes. So mispositioning and not really kind of reassessing the lenses of how big we were and how much people knew us was probably one of the main reasons. Coupled with the timing, it was just, it was probably bound to happen. But then also another thing, Becca, then I'll done, because we talk about it a lot and it's annoying and I want to hear your opinion on this. Also, my intuition told me, like, this is not the right way for you to do it. But I didn't know any better. I didn't know how else to do it. I didn't want to have investors as well because I really wanted it to be mine, especially at the early stages. I wanted to shape it exactly how I wanted it to be. I was very particular about it because that's our ethics. And I was like, I want to do it my own way. And everything in my body and my gut was telling me, this is just, you can do it, but it's not the way.
Right.
And, so whenever I thought about it afterwards, I was like, I knew it. I didn't feel scared excited. I didn't feel like, oh, this is big excited. No, I generally feel like, nah, no. And I want to hear your opinion about this now as well, because you talk about it a lot as well, I know with leadership especially. I think it's hard for you to learn how to trust your intuition until you actually learn how to trust your intuition, until you do things and kind of get that feedback for yourself. Because everybody tells you trust your intuition. And I love this advice, but also infuriates me because I'm like, how are people supposed to know?
Exactly. There's intuition and then there's hindsight. What you have now is hindsight. And this is what I see a lot, unfortunately, in women navigating any sort of relationship, be it business, be it personal. We see red flags as a challenge sometimes. Isn't it annoying? Because it's true. So that is, and if I'm completely honest, this is exactly why I would love to have even more conversation. I would love to have this type of conversation every single day, because intuition is only if life is a massive tree that we have to chop and intuition is the axe, the way we do our life and we interact, the media that we consume, that is what will sharpen the axe before we start chopping down the tree. So for me, when people say, oh, I have good intuition because I'm older or because of this, but I fully believe it really then, you have to, I think, for example, if you listen to so many true crime story podcasts, your quote unquote,
Which I definitely don't.
I don't, but your quote unquote intuition when it comes to public safety, and security, will be completely more sharp than others. So,
Oh my God,
so
yes.
yeah, so it really then, I would encourage women, when you are ambitious like us and you only have 24 hours a day, just like everybody else, the real estate in your brain, uh, is crucial for you to keep the real estate for something that will heighten your senses and sharpen your intuition. Like, so it really depends on the input, then the output. But then the trusting bit, I think it's like, I also, so many times, there's an opportunity that of course, at the beginning, we always say yes, right? To everything, especially myself. It's out of fear that the world or the universe doesn't see how grateful I am to be given an opportunity. I don't know if it's
Mm-hmm.
culturally or gender wise that I'm like, Rebecca, somebody's giving you work, just accept it. But, um, what I've learned with intuition, age, wisdom, and what have you, at least now, even if I see a red flag and saw it as a challenge and took it anyway, I knew when to stop it. So, um, probably in your case, you knew that it wasn't right anyway. And as soon as it didn't work, you're like, okay, let's start building and snowball and iterate and snowball, instead of, because we see a lot of companies crumble as soon as they get funded, ironically, right? So, yeah. And there you go. Like, okay, listeners, subscribe to Fab's newsletter and my newsletter. That is basically the whole rambling is just to plug our newsletter. But honestly, it's like when I see Fab's newsletter come to my inbox, I immediately open it because I know all I want to do is to make myself a little bit smarter, a little bit, ahead of the curve. Because what is intuition if it's not, a collation of information and signals that will help you make a decision, a better decision, right? So
I
so
love
yeah,
that.
so
I
that's
actually want. Can I?
that's my
Can,
preach.
I love it. First of all, yes to all of that. So like, yes to all that. And can I add one more
Mm-hmm.
thing, which is going to resonate with us as marketers, but I think also with any kind of founder. I think so. When I talk to about marketers, I think there are two skills that are super important for marketers, but then I will almost flip them back, especially for female founders. But in general, for founders, I think they're
Mm-hmm.
really valuable if you ask me. So for marketers, first, curiosity and creativity.
Mm-hmm.
So with creativity, though, I look at it as just kind of tapping into like, interesting ideas.
Mm-hmm.
But then the curiosity allows us, which is kind of going back to you, talking about the newsletters inspiring you.
Mm-hmm.
Curiosity also means being brave enough. So I guess that's three. But curiosity in being brave enough to try things
Yes.
and see what doesn't work. And I think as a
Mm-hmm.
marketer, as marketers for a very long time, something that we are taught that this is what we want to teach our students as well as marketers: try stuff, try things, because especially in the digital space, things change all the time and you don't have control over everything. So if you don't try, you don't know if your audience is going to resonate, if things are going to work for you. And that's why my approach with the crowdfunding taught me that as well. I was like, well, I tried it. What have I learned from it? What are the things that then, as you say, I can teach others or bring awareness for others that are not going to make the same mistakes? And I think we talk about confidence, which is amazing. We talk about, we talked about other things as well. We had a previous conversation about
Yeah.
leadership. We talked about all the different skills. But I think, again, untapped for marketers and really useful for everybody
Mm.
else are not being afraid to tap into our curiosity
Yeah.
and actually kind of let our creativity go wild a bit more. And it can be stifled so much. And I think you probably will know it better than I do. I never worked in a corporate job. I
Mm.
only worked in startups.
Yeah.
But I think there's so many industries and so many companies and so many even levels like on leadership that will actually stifle the creativity for results, for ROI, for outcome, for driving
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
towards the headlights. And I'm like, why can't we just slow down and actually embrace trying things, see if they work, and if they don't, how can we make them
I
better?
think your next
But if we don't allow
tattoo,
ourselves,
your next tattoo should
oh God,
be A/B testing. Just
I
A
mean,
slash
sexy.
B, and I'll know what it means.
And everybody else who listens to the podcast will know.
Absolutely. So now I ask this question a lot to fellow female founders because I see it day in and day out how we struggle pricing ourselves. To me, that is the massive implication of imposter syndrome. People think imposter syndrome is just like fear of public speaking or whatever, but it goes straight down our bottom line. The fact that
Mm-hmm.
we're conditioned to be gentle, meek, to go with the flow, to go with what the market says, hurts our bottom line. So, how did you? So, you know all this, and you're an alpha girl, and you're curious and brave. How did you decide on your pricing when you started the school?
Oh God, I think excellent question. And I think again we talk about it a bit more these days, but not enough. So let's keep talking about it. So
Exactly.
yay. Yeah. For the school it was easier because actually I had at the time maybe 6 years of business, if or seven almost,
Mm.
working from that.
Mm-hmm.
So I've done pricing for creative impact. I've done pricing for my consulting.
Mm.
I've done pricing in so many ways that I kind of, and also for my clients a
Mm-hmm.
lot because I was working with a lot of entrepreneurs myself. So you can imagine. And I always find, I want to say this, first of all, it's always easier um, to have others, to help others with their pricing than yourself.
Yes.
One of the things that I actually, you know what I mean? One of the things that I go back to, so there's one practical thing I want to give
Mm-hmm.
everybody, but also want to say that another thing that really helped me was just talking to my husband as a sounding board
Mm-hmm.
and just being like, what are your opinions? Because obviously, again, stereotyping, but there is some truth in
Yep.
that. The kind of driven male, like you should charge more, this should be more. And it kind of helped me also understanding why would I justify charging less for some of the things,
Mm-hmm.
and then also appreciating actually how much work I would put into stuff.
Mm.
There's something that people say that I read literally the other day on Instagram, which is, you shouldn't charge for the 1 hour that you're spending with people, but for the 10 years of experience you have.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's kind of finding that middle ground of understanding. There's two things here that I want to say. So first of all, before I give you the practical element, also what life do you want to lead, and how the way that you price yourself, the way that you grow your business is going to help you with that. The way you want to scale your business is going to help you with that. If you think that maybe you want to charge a bit more and give more, let's say, hands-on support or a different
Mm.
kind of, client
Yeah.
base because you want to work with less people and have more time and freedom, that's totally
Mm.
fine. If you maybe want to produce products that is for the masses and you're happy to kind of really work and be part of your company and grow it from that case and scale it, then maybe you decide to make, to find pricing that can allow for smaller, lower hand products.
Mm.
I don't know. There's that also to remember.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's like it's great to charge more to make more money,
Mm-hmm.
but is it going to cost
Mm.
your values and how you want to live your life,
Mm.
because then you're going to find yourself working yourself to the
Yeah.
ground. So that's the other thing, is that balance.
Yeah.
On a practical level, my main thing I want to say that really helped me with the school. So what I do every time we finish a cohort, I kind of update our release notes. So they're publicly on the website.
Mm-hmm.
You can find them. If you go to our certification page, you will find at the bottom, it says, check out what's new. And that has been an exercise that has helped me doing what I say my clients and our students to do as well
Mm-hmm.
sometimes, which is think about everything that you are doing or everything that is included in the experience of working with
Mm-hmm.
you. And obviously, the release notes allow me to write it down and see it and publicly share with
Mm.
others. And I realized that for us 8-week cohort, the amount of work that we do, the amount of support that we give, the personalized experience that we provide to all our students is not worth less than 2.5. I mean, it's 265, but it's not worth less than 2.5 grand. As simple as that. We offer solutions to help with financing, and also we have some scholarships. Yes.
Yeah.
But overall, that was the pricing that felt right, because I was able to look at everything that we do and we provide. So that really helps, is kind of looking at actually what is the experience you're providing, not just that hour of teaching, not just that hour of the workshop. How is everything working together? That's really helped me massively, not undercharging for the school pretty much ever, I would say. But I've done it so much for everything else I've done. So talking to my husband helps me to bring perspective, but also to remind myself, or actually, what is the reason why I'm undercharging, or if I'm overcharging, which rarely happens, to be honest. Writing down everything and kind of getting an idea of where your time is going and everything that you are actually doing for that specific service or product. But yeah, always be mindful of, and again, this is where I would love to hear your opinion, that balance of, charging more because you want to grow or scale, or you think, that's your path, but then also kind of being honest with yourself and being like, is money really, that element of money is my priority, or is it more like finding a way to then free my time and reclaim my time? How are they going to work together, and how is it going to help me lead a life where I work the way that I want to work? I would love to hear your opinion on that, because I know it can be really contentious, like grow, more. But then I love my time and I value it so much.
Oh, 100%. Look, the two things about pricing, from my observation, there's only two ways, as you said. Either you charge premium or you charge mass market. If you go to the middle of the road in any way, when you're middle of the road, you're not pleasing anyone, right? You're not attracting anyone. So I agree with that approach. And the second thing is about growth. This is what is interesting. So at Upgrading Women, we have a marketing agency as well. And because let's toot my own horn, because I can do everything myself, from public speaking, designing, copywriting, strategizing, what have you. I can just, quote unquote, be a freelancer and serve my agency client that way and absorb all of the revenue and profit for myself. But then, is that, as you said, is that the life that I want to lead? Well, in short, evidently, it's not. I want to build a team of fellow ambitious women that share the same values and that share same taste as well, because we work in creative, right? So that I can A, distribute the wealth, and B, I can then serve more client and spread more words, basically grow. And I'm not even taking a salary, but I want to make sure that my team members get salary on time and that their salary is adjusted as soon as I can see in the project management tool that they're working more than they normally do. They get salary bump, and that there's no arbitrary like, oh, every 6 months we're gonna review. No, as soon as the more you work, the more you earn. That's our own our internal business model. But yeah, this is the life I want to. I'm not gonna buy a new car in the next couple of years, because I would rather, the more revenue that, or the more clients that we have, the more women, the more jobs that I'm creating. Like, that is what I want to do. I think I remember telling someone yesterday, this is a long game for me. Upgrading Women just started in 2022, and I'm building this company as part of the inheritance for my daughter. So I think I'll be rich when I'm an old grandma wearing Prada. But for now, I'm like, oh my god, I want to, and I love what you said about brand awareness. This is my day to day, even though again I can do all the client delivery myself if I wanted to, but what I'm doing is the business development, the networking with people like yourself, spreading awareness through blabbering on all over podcasts and social media. So that's what that is the life that I want to choose, because then within a couple of hours I can pick up my kids from school, right? And that is the one thing that any salary cannot replace. So um, a lot of people think that, oh yeah, but we have to hustle, etc. Well, that's fine. It really, I envy people, genuinely envy people without carrying responsibilities, without kids, without pets, without parents or siblings, uh, because then this is basically me 15 years ago. I knew my life then, it was just work, work, work. And I just charge whatever. A lot of times I choose not to get paid as long as I can get, the big brand name on my CV, So yeah, as you mentioned, selecting the pricing, a lot of people forget to put the element of the level of comfort, which is tailored to just you as a founder. Now, I want to ask you about choosing a spouse as a female founder. You mentioned that your husband is your sounding board. What do you think a good, if a female founder out there is still single or still considering what to look for, and or what are the red flags, like, okay, this is a no for a spouse for a female founder?
I mean, I think is what I want to say is I have a lot of friends who are female founders and they who have I've met all of their husbands or wives, and they're all different. Like Mike is one of his own and is perfect in every way because we're compatible as human beings. That's what I would personally say. Like
Mm,
it's not even the funny thing is that if you are a founder, then you will have potentially more self awareness because we talk about you need it for so many
yeah.
things. You will have different different priorities, but then you could argue that for different types of job you will have random working hours or working
Yes.
nights or working weekends. So I think if anything, it forces you maybe a bit more to think about, how can I find somebody that really complements who I am as a person?
Mm,
Whether it's, both your love language, but also, your communication.
mm,
What are your priorities? I would say in general, in any relationship, whether
mhm.
it's, a really good friendship, there are the kind of, what is it called? The shoe friendships is something, I don't remember the name of it. It's something like the friendships that you kind of like, you see them every year and you're like, fine, it's good. But really good friendships or something about shoes. Anybody, if you know, let me know what it was. Because it literally is something about shoes. I remember I read it before. But really good friendships, just like any kind of relationships. So even if it is a romantic
Mhm.
relationship, aligning your priorities is crucial. And I think that's another very, very important
Yeah.
thing, a line of especially personal priorities.
Mhm.
So again, probably a cop out answer to the question, but honestly, we found each other and we just work because we work so well together as human beings, and
Mm,
it doesn't matter. Like obviously, and there's a cliche, he always supports me, which he does, and that really matters because, but also he supports me especially with my mental well-being, and that in itself is also like very much ups and
yeah.
downs. I always said that running a business is like a roller coaster, being on a roller coaster every single day, all day.
Mhm.
That is what literally is
Yep.
running a business. So I would almost say that it's kind of feeling very similar when it comes to also, like living with, mental health condition. And he is willing to learn how to work together towards anything.
Mhm.
And that's all that matters the most to me. So
Mm.
if that can be maybe one thing to look for, that might be something, can you work together through things? Can you learn from each other? Are you willing, both of you, to put the work to become better people together?
Yes.
If the answer is yes, then probably you got a good egg.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's I think the interesting one would be especially those who started as a couple before their entrepreneurship journey. Then it becomes interesting because it's absolutely then different routine, different headspace, and I love it when you said find someone that can support you. I'm always imagining if you see your partner, your partner can be also your partner in Amazing Race. You know, then you should marry them because it's like the ups and downs, the challenges that you have to work together. It doesn't mean that you have to have exact same personality, skill set, etc. But it's the compatibility. And when you're under such pressure in public, etc., when towards a goal, and you're bickering instead of okay, let's grab that tuk and, and run. Then it's a completely different, vibe. So my last question to you, and I forgot to tell you this, but I always say that women can be king as well, not just queen. But I want to ask you, like a hypothetical, in the perfect world that Fab designs, when, so you could complete this sentence, please. When I'm king, what would you say? What would you do?
That's a good. What would I do? There's so many things. That's the problem. Is like all the things that I could. It depends. So when would I king? That's a question back to you. When
Yes.
I am king, what would I do, or what would I want my people to do or
Yeah.
to experience? Which
So
angle
what is
should I
the
go? Because
world?
I could literally.
What will the world looks like if we elect Fab as king?
Okay,
Like free
so
chocolate every
when
day.
oh god, yes, oh my god, like no more pineapple on pizza. I'm joking.
Yeah.
Or am I? Anyway, I mean, it's probably works, but I wouldn't waste it on that. Not waste. I wouldn't really use that for that. I think that would be a bit reductive. I got it. I think when I am king, we'll learn to love ourselves a tiny bit more.
Oh god.
Just a tiny bit more.
Yeah.
Just a tiny bit more. We deserve that, I think.
Yeah.
And if we do that for ourselves, then we are better for doing it for others, and that makes a hell of a difference.
Love, or as Korea, as South Korean pop would say. They do it like this.
Tiny love.
Yeah, teeny tiny love, like cute Asian love. Well, thank you so much, Fab, and listeners. If you have fabulous, equally fabulous female founders that you would love for me to be nosy about in their business, just like I have with Fab, tell me, email me, Rebecca@upgradingwomen.com, and I will find that female founder, grab her by the fascinator, and and sit with me, lady, and tell me your age. So yeah, thank you so much, Fab.
It was my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Okie doke. So rate this episode, share it with your girlfriend, and I will see you in the next episode. Let me turn this camera off.